So the distinction that fertility actually causes the distinction that fertility causes extinction is a conundrum that I even had to find how to wrap my mind around how fertility develops human extinction. And now I see it in families, I see it in the community, I see it all over the place. Oh my God, I see it. And how can you think that when the common thought process is that fertility carries on the human race? Well, yeah. It's the amount of fertility, what the practices are during that culture as far as diseases. I mean, I wasn't born or even raised back in antiquity, but I could see how the remedies market, even back in 2700 BCE, caused so many of the monsters in our society, causing even Imhotep to develop surgery, to be the first physician. 2700 BCE, why did they even develop a surgeon? What was the reason behind that? Oh, because not only are you exposed to people and animals and microbes, but maybe even all the remedy system developing those parasitic entities. Okay? That's what prompted alchemy and the surgery system to work hand in hand. That was the fertility to develop new specimens, new prototypes, and then experiment and train them and do what people do that they do today when they're training their children or their animals. And so fertility actually weakens the genetic line. Fertility is only meant for human experimentation. It was not meant, when you think about it, it was not really meant as something long-term to carry on the human race, because you'd have to keep repeating history, develop so many crazy specimens, because at the end of that genetic line, they become little monsters. And then you have to go and clear the petri dish and start over again, which is why then you saw some of those pictures of the 1800s, if you see on TikTok or on Facebook Reels, the pictures of buildings with no humans, no activity, like completely maybe one or two cows, but no humans. Why? Because there was another reset. What happens is when you develop so many children in such a short amount of time, when you have so many children, having so many children, that weakens genetic line, and then also develops criminal behavior, develops even stressful genetic diseases that then you have to go and figure out how to cure it. But then on top of that, you develop another baby on top of that with those genetic issues plus the compound issues. And that's what keeps feeding the system of the medical holistic. So then now I get it. That's right. That's right. 2700 BCE and Imhotep, the first physician, was necessary because of alchemy. Okay? Because alchemy develops offspring fertility. It keeps dividing the genetic line. So anyway, so yesterday, I'll tell you what, my arms are sore. Yesterday, my under armpit on this side, even it's hard for me to raise this arm like this. Seriously, it's now harder to raise my arms in this environment. It's pretty crazy. I don't even know what it means. I'm not going to make any meaning of it. But my armpits are sore, and yeah, I was smelling whatever's coming out of my armpits. It was like, ew. My body is releasing. My lymph nodes are open. Body's releasing. Highly energetic. My arms are sore, but not super sore, but they're sore. And I know this environment is definitely different. The poles have flipped. I even Googled the climate change projection, or even how is Ohio going to deal with climate change. And they're saying, snow season's diminishing. It's going to be warmer, obviously. I'm already feeling it. I look outside. It's bright outside when it's really sunny. And so I wrote this morning when I was doing my thinking. I do my best thinking very early in the morning. Very early. As you can see. And so I wrote this. I'll read this. Yeah, I'll just go down this. I'm just going to go down my timeline. Because I want you to see what my thought process is during this whole time. So I'll go from the newest to the oldest. So I'm looking back on my high school class and seeing who has so many kids and those who don't have any, or they have just one. Okay, so I look back at some of them people I used to hang out with in junior high. I don't say high school class because I didn't go to high school with any of these people. But I went to junior high, and they feed into all the different high schools. And some have like 5 or 6 boys and girls. Some have more girls and boys. And I see some of these kids that are very sickly looking, skinny and sickly looking. Very sickly looking. I'm just like, oh God. And I've noticed that with children nowadays that are born right now, is that they're very skinny, sickly looking, fragile. And you're just like, and yeah, they can't handle too much stress. Yeah, they would have to go stay home during a snow day or a really high heat day, because we have been developing offspring that are weak, because that's the nature of generations when you keep reproducing generations. I won't even say, weak generations, because that's all relative. But as you keep reproducing children, keep reproducing them, and you have so many of them, and then they reproduce each other, then eventually, when you think the family tree, after everything's been reproduced out of existence, there's not too much evolution, diversity, and all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of diversity, but not really. And they're curing themselves, developing weaker situations, and of course, they can't eat food. They're highly intolerant to food and nutrition. Then the end of the family line is that weakest kid who dies suddenly. Some kids are not even born because they're stillbirths because of the fertility even in their own immune system. Remember, we're in a high amount of growth, and we're around a lot of people, animals, remedies, and these kids are exposed to a vast amount of growth. Some can't handle that kind of fertility, that kind of growth, and so their predisposed issues cause them to have a heart attack or a stroke or die suddenly, stillbirth, SIDS. That's what SIDS is. People want to blame the V's. Okay, that was a scapegoat. But when you think about what sudden infant death is the fact that that was a child that could not handle the environment. They couldn't handle the exposure of their friends, the family, animals, remedies, anything. And so they die suddenly. Okay? And people don't understand that. They're like, oh, it was this, it was that, it was the other thing. But when you think about what's going on, I'm looking at my high school class and seeing who has so many kids, and those who don't have any kids, or they have just one, then I'm thinking, okay, that baby that died in its crib, let's say 20 years ago, maybe they're like the 50th kid in a long genetic line of people, and that was just the last hurrah that couldn't survive the new environment. It was a child from an old world into a new world that could not survive the new environment. No matter how many helpers in the medical system it was exposed to. Because really, when you think about the therapies, especially the V's, ACCINESs, those are supposed to be some kind of representation of the environment so that baby develops some kind of antibodies to give it its assimilation process, but it also needs to have a release process so those antibodies don't become so numerous and clog up things. So there's like a two-pronged approach. When you think of the V's, the person's immune system still must be able to release the demon when you think about it. But that doesn't always happen. And so they have so much, and then, yeah, there's a die suddenly. And that's sudden infant death. No different than sudden adult death. The immune system could not handle the environment because of so much exposure. And a crappy release process. Okay? And so Generation X was the experiment. And it was anybody's guess how we all were going to come out. But then I'm looking at some of these Gen X groups, and they're showing like, oh yeah, look, I'm over here at the building of Mike Damone's Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and look, and I'm like thinking, when I actually saw the full uncensored version of Fast Times Ridgemont High, and I was so aghast and appalled at what they were actually, what the scenes they cut out. And it was seriously just telling high school students to go have sex. In that movie, they were training the girls and the boys to go have sex. And I was never exposed to, I never knew that movie existed. I never watched it. Even when I was at that age of high school, I was in juvenile hall or in some group home or in some shelter, and I wasn't around my peers. I'm so happy I was not around my peers at the time, or I would have ended up to be a single mother, like a lot of mothers out there during that time. If then they weren't part of some, rich household that said, okay, time to have an abortion because you're going to ruin your life if you don't, get that abortion so you can go to this school and then go on from there. And so those that are in like the areas like here, like I'm in Ohio here, all right, and you're getting exposed to Fast Times at Ridgemont High, no wonder there's a huge single mother rate. No wonder people are having so many kids. Okay, so then I'm here, I see that people have so many kids here in Ohio, in the area that I live in. So many. And even when I went to Mississippi and I was working at the casinos, there were girls that I was working with that they had kids at like 15, 14. They had children at 13, 12, whatever. I'm like, holy shit. And I'm coming from California where it's like, no. They knew scientifically and physiologically it was going to actually harm the mother. Taking more resources away from her. Weakening not only her, but also the genetic line. And of course, me coming from Vietnam, and I'm already weak anyways as a war baby, having a child, even back when I was 19, 20, 21, would probably would have contracted cancer earlier if I had a child. I'm so glad I had an abortion. And I'm going to tell you this, I had an abortion way back when. And if I would have had that child, yeah, I probably would have contracted cancer, some kind of disorder, because that would be the body trying to come back and push out demons. Because obviously when you have a baby, you already have the antibodies that then cause a trigger the fertility of sexual reproduction. But it was kind of a weird thing because when you're programmed to be a plaything or programmed to be hot and cute, but not to have a child, then you're programmed to be some kind of courtesan, right? You're programmed to just be married to someone or play around to be that sexually free woman like they promoted back in the 1960s, and that would have its own downfall. And it does, okay? Because there's domestic violence and there's also other things, and I was programmed for academics, but I so rejected it, and I had a lot of learning disabilities back then too. So it was anybody's guess how I was going to end up. But Generation X was the experiment. So while my peers were either programmed to go into these colleges like they were, or they're programmed to have a bunch of children. So if you're programmed on the West Coast, in the higher socioeconomic areas, you're programmed to go to college, you're getting the abortion, you're getting the degrees, and you're getting that whole, okay, you're going to have a family later after you have a degree, okay? And then you're somewhere where there isn't that kind of advanced education. If they are, they're in different places. But in the more rural areas over here, women are having sex everywhere, and they're having a bunch of children, a lot of them, and it's weakening their genetic line. That's how we all been programmed, okay? And so Generation X was the experiment, and it was anybody's guess how we all were going to come out. But looking at some of the movies we were exposed to, but not me, Like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, and all the slasher movies. Yeah, you were programmed to self-destruct after you carried out your duties. Okay, so even those in Silicon Valley who were destined to go to Stanford and Harvard and Yale and Berkeley and all that, you still were programmed to have a bunch of kids. You were still programmed through the slasher movies, through all the sex movies, the John Hughes movies, right? You're programmed to self-destruct, and then here's all the pleasures in paradise. What is that? All the vacations, all the drugs and the alcohol and the great foods and the events and the traditions and Christmas and all that stuff. So in my town here, unless you were extraordinarily gifted and sent off to the best schools, even moving away from here, you were programmed to have a bunch of children and then party and then die after doing your job of maintaining the people around you. Because what else is there do in your town if there isn't specific things like a specific research and development? I mean, I guess if you go to Columbus or you go to maybe Cleveland, but not even that. Columbus and Cincinnati, and you have like Ohio State, and you have Kent State over here somewhere up north. Okay, yeah, maybe there's certain things you go into like public policy and government and planning. But if you weren't really programmed for any of that, then it was just going into the service industry. It was then going working for a factory or being a mother and a wife. Essentially what I'm doing. But I'm not built to work in a factory. I did the sales thing. I'm done with that. I'm not playing that game. And so I'm actually going back to what I was trained for, which is basically research and development. Because I was the fucking guinea pig. So when the guinea pig turns into the scientist, there you go. That's coming full circle. Okay? And so if you're born on the two coasts or in a metropolitan area in a higher socioeconomic area, you might get the luxury of receiving some kind of advanced training. However, the programming of self-destruct was still implanted. And it was done through the family. Okay? And so I will tell you that the religion has a lot to do with how many kids you have. And it's not surprising to me that those who are very religious have a lot more kids than those who are not. So there's two girls I used to hang out with, either in my elementary school. Yeah, I had a best friend too in elementary school. And then even in junior high. Two of them are very religious. They have a whole bunch of kids. One, I don't know if she's religious, but she has a few kids. And she's in sports. And she was great in sports and everything. And so, of course, her kids are all about sports. Her husband's all about sports. And so, yeah, and one of the girls I used to hang out with in junior high, she went to UC Santa Cruz. And then I remember talking to her when I was in my 20s. So I'm hanging out in Lafayette in my 20s, hanging out with older people who were foreign students that went to DVC, Diablo Valley College, and I was on the phone with her. She's saying, yeah, I'm experimenting with being gay. She said she was a lesbian. She said, everybody's a lesbian. Everybody's gay. And I'm like, what? What? Everybody's gay? Everybody's what? And then come to find out later on, she switched from that and she became, I don't know, another religion and married somebody and then has so many children. So she went from experimenting at UC Santa Cruz, experimenting with her sexuality, to then finally going to the other side, the other extreme of becoming so religious. Now she has like 5 or 6 or 7 children. I forget how many. I'm like, wow, what a swing. What an extreme. And so that's self-destruct. Not only just high sexuality of like, oh, you everyone's gay, to then, well, I'm going to have 1 billion children. That's some pretty black and white programming right there. And it's still self-destruct. That's what people don't realize, that no matter which side you go as far as sexuality, it's still self-destruct. You're still dividing yourself, heavily fertile, and using all the remedies and drugs and alcohol and sex and all that stuff. And it's self-destruct. And it was all done through the family. And I will tell you, religion has a lot to do with how many kids you have. And it's not surprising to me that those who are very religious have a lot more kids than those who are not. And those who are not very religious may not have a lot of kids or none at all, but then it's the sexual orientation that they are going to. But that alone will not make a difference in longevity. Just not having kids does not ensure you're going to carry on the human race with just you. It's time to take it a step further. Okay, now remember my programming. I was programmed not to have children, to be somebody's wife or plaything. Like so many women before me and after me have been programmed to be if they don't have any children. And if I hadn't discovered what I discovered, I will tell you this, I would have died from domestic violence situation or cancer. I just got lucky to end up with my husband. He wasn't going to do any domestic violence against me, but I was destined to have some kind of cancer or lymphoma or some kind of something. And I already saw that right on the wall a long time ago. Thank gosh I discovered what I discovered. I'm telling you, my own protocol saved my own ass. And right now, many women have children will be facing, who have children will be facing that fate. Maybe a few can redirect. I can only hope. So if you plan to have children, their fate is to either die from a domestic violence situation, as well as the mother, or cancer in the future. Of course, dropping a few babies along the way. So imagine when these girls are being forced into a marriage and they're forced to have children. Okay, not only will they succumb to cancer, disease, and chronic illness and autoimmune disorders and even die suddenly, but that's the fate of her children because they're not gaining any substance. If anything, they have been thermodynamically weakened. That's the thermodynamics. Every single time you convert an energy from reproducing a child, not only the mother loses the energy and the substance, but also those children are coming in now at an exponential deficit. So imagine exponentially regenerating children, or producing offspring, generation of generation. That energy conversion weakens every single time that genetic line as it keeps converting that energy into a new offspring. That's why the whole J world's about, okay, relax on the fertility, relax on the remedies if you can, relax on the sexuality if you can, relax on the social outings if you can, and get your freaking substance back. And yeah, you're gonna feel some shit. Okay, just like women who are pregnant, they feel stuff. And when they're releasing that baby, those labor pains are really extraordinarily painful, as I've heard. I don't know for sure. So imagine when you're pushing out the poop, imagine when you're pushing out or pushing the antibodies through your immune system, the blood vessels and capillaries and arteries. Yeah, it's painful. And then you're feeling it seep out of your armpits. Sometimes people have explosive diarrhea, not because of the JJs, because their body is now desperate to release those demons. All right? So when you think about fertility and sexual reproduction, it's thermodynamics, it's entropy. It's entropy. The deterioration of that genetic line, of that human. And now we have people out there who are advocating the destruction of not only women, but also themselves, the men. Because now you're seeing in the diascendant groups, these men, 42 years old, ex-Air Force pilot or Air Force person, who has a bunch of kids, and I guess he happens to be Asian too, so there's already a weakness there because when you put together just like next to each other, an Asian person and an African American, and you put them through a type of climate change, I will put all my eggs on the African American to survive versus that Asian person, unless that Asian person really brings in more than just sushi and veggies and rice. They would have to eat a lot of meat, a lot of milk, a lot of cheese, a lot of eggs, and build up their infrastructure. Okay? And so it's not surprising that those who are skinnier in certain cultures will succumb to this environment. And some people like myself, who is Asian, and believe me, I'm not as strong as my husband, but I'm getting stronger. But I still have to release demons as far as blowing my nose and all that stuff when he comes home. But I can handle him. Okay? But as far as out there, no. I don't want to keep having to eat so much food in order to deal with people and then have to release that baby of demons that I've collected from that exposure. But I was born into this world at a deficit from war and then programmed in a specific way for many years. So it's going to take me, like I'm going to be 50 next year. It's going to take me a while to really build up that stamina. But then here's the thing, my husband, he's raised in this area and he has a lot of substance to him. And so he has a lot more time under his belt, a lot more of that opportunity to be strong and diverse and all that. And so at some point, there will be a tipping point. At what point will that happen? I don't know. But the more people stay traditional and they don't recoup a lot of resources lost from their lifestyle, the environment and their lifestyle will suck the life out of them. Because not only do you have to release those demons, but you have to recoup those resources. You have to really take on the food, okay, and the rest. And so if you plan to have children, their fate is to either die from a domestic violence situation or cancer in the future, of course, dropping a few babies along the way, ensuring short lifespans. And that was the intention. Aggressive sexuality leading to children and then died suddenly. Again, that's entropy. That's all entropy. That's thermodynamics. Especially in this environment. I think now is time to redirect our children into a very different course if they even survive their childhood. Parents, you have a choice. You have a chance. Some of you parents have a chance to save yourself, and many people will be in denial of this type of black and white, very in-your-face projection. But the writing is on the wall. People want to live in the fantasy of the old world. But look around you. When the environment speeds up, so does entropy. See, before 2019, it was still entropy, but it was drawn out. So you thought you had 80 years, 70 years relative to your predisposed issues. But when the environment speeds up, entropy actually happens faster. And that's something else I have to write down. And so fertility equals entropy. Oh my God. Fertility equals entropy. Okay? And so when the environment speeds up, entropy happens faster. Entropy speeds up. That's thermodynamics. That's why these kids are maturing faster, realizing their potential sooner. People are aging faster, quicker, and getting diagnosable conditions and dying suddenly. They reach the end of their entropical cycle. That's not a word, I just made it up. Look around you. To say it will never happen to you is purposely sticking your head in the sand. It happened to me. What happened? I had to fight those demons inside. The entropy of when the body is activated from a very aggressive environment and it's causing then hives and the colds and the flu and the COVID and all those different symptoms. That's the body trying to push out the demon. And if I would have resisted taking more remedies and doing more things against my body, eventually it would be the entropy would then it would realize itself and I would die suddenly. So I already experienced the entropy, which is the energy conversion, which was the immune system activation from the climate change. So if it happened to fucking me, okay, and I'm nobody special, it's happening to your children. It's happening to you. It's happening to your grandparents. People are dying suddenly. All right? Just saying it will never happen to you is purposely sticking your head in the sand. It happened to me. I'm not special. I'm just like you and your children. I fought off those demons. And I even activated my immune system the last 7 years, and the system even activated my immune system the last 3 years. And I had to take a lot of time off, and I will continue to take time off from the general population and social situations. The environment is just too aggressive. Men can handle it on some level, but not all men. As you can see in the diet Sunday groups, the kind of men who are succumbing to the environment, and they also have children. Burly women might have a chance. Skinny women who've had a lot of children really need to step up their game in staying home, away from people, away from animals and children, and eat so much food and feel the release. I say it's impossible because how many women who are, their whole world is their family and friends are going to do that? Not many, if at all. Therein lies the problem. It's very difficult to change a culture until that culture is forced to change. Sometimes people are going to die when a culture is in the process of changing. And that is happening right now. Again, it's not my fault. You were born into that culture and you were given plenty of warnings to change. I even tried to help. But of course, me intervening back in 2016 then made me a target to those who are already at the end of their line, needing to blame yet something else, right? The system was like, what the fuck? You got in the middle. You should have let them blame all the V's and the GMO and the air, food, and water. And now you're giving them something else to blame, Jillian. What the hell are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying to save the world. And they're like, you don't want to be that savior because you know what happens to saviors? They get martyrized. Look what happened to Jesus Christ. Look what happened to MLK. Look what happened to JFK. Look what happened to all these people that were trying to save the world. Yeah, they become a martyr because they became not only too influential, but then when people want to blame something and it wasn't all what they expected it to be, then they will turn their hate on you and then they turn into little Hitlers and genocide you. And so you don't want to get in the middle of a system doing what it needs to do. And I did. I inserted myself in between what was going to happen. And yeah, oh my God. I did wake up the demons. And yeah, I had to fight that battle, but I wasn't hurting anybody. People already were doing it to themselves with all the remedies. They were already too far gone. They have already procreated and sped up entropy in their own genetic line already for years. For years. And so I even tried to help out, but of course, the road to hell is paved by good intentions. So I observe and give you my observations and you make your own choices. It's not difficult to prophesize when you understand scientifically how the past became the future and faster in this environment. I've seen combinations in families where one person didn't have kids and they were either the eldest sibling or the youngest sibling. I've seen 3 female siblings and the eldest has 2 kids. The middle sibling had 1 kid and the youngest sibling had no kids. I've seen another family 4 boys. The eldest has no kids. The 2 middle siblings had at least 2 kids, and the youngest had at least 1 or 2 children. And then another family of 4 that has, the one had like 3 or 4. Oh, hell, I can't even count. Another one had like 1 or 2, and another one had yeah. Oh my God. Okay. And so from that situation, the next generation is weaker. Generations today are generally weaker, especially when they have a lot of aunts and uncles, and that was the intention. Fine, if you want to have a bunch of kids, a bunch of family, fine. But when the climate changes, what's their future? Can they handle the change in evolution? So fine, if you want a bunch of children, they will have to adapt to climate change. That is the Hunger Games. The weakest ones will succumb to climate change. That's Darwinism. Survival of the fittest. The more generational offspring you produce, the weaker the version of your genetic line is. That's entropy. Having a child is entropy. Not only for that child, but also for the mother, for the parent. Sexuality is entropy. Holy shit. Sexuality is entropy. And then, of course, when you're around a bunch of people, there is microbial fornication going on. There's entropy going on right there. That's why I stay home and stay safe. I don't deal with too many people. I don't even wear a mask out there because I might as well just get in whatever information I get in, deal with it, blow out the demons, take on the benefits, become smarter. Okay? So it's up to you. It's all on how you want to do it. I don't care if you wear a mask or not. But I don't wear a mask now. But I don't go out too much anymore. And if I do, like sit in a restaurant for an hour, I'll be releasing those demons. I'll sleep really good too. Because it's a lot of work. When my husband was home just like yesterday or the day before, I was so tired. when I was trying to show him that movie, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna watch, and then I start falling asleep, and I hear myself snore. I even hear myself snore. When my husband's home, man, I get a workout, not just because of just that one time that we do it, but just being around him. All of his microbes are coming into contact with my microbes, and it's work. There's a lot of thermodynamics going on, and I have to eat, and the next morning release those demons. And I'm energetic, yes, and then on Mondays, I'm like, okay, I'm exhausted from that. So imagine if we had kids and an animal and a huge social life. I would be sucked dry. It would be crazy. It would be done. I'd be done. I'd be finished. Which is why parents who have some substance to them and an ounce of evolution, you might stand a chance to survive this great reset. That's the system discouraging. That's why the system discourages having families, because the children are going to suffer. They already are suffering. It is time to save yourself. Minors do not have the capacity to save themselves. Adults do. So now I can make that connection to sexuality and families, to thermodynamics, entropy. And then the whole J world is balancing entropy with negentropy and not being sexually active or trying to be fertile or taking on the remedies and surgeries and anything else. Now it's balancing out the fact that I'm exposed to my husband, exposed to the environment, and it's going to cause thermodynamics or entropy, and then I balance out with food, which will then be representation of negentropy. And that's why I said, feed you or feed the beast, feed both of you, and release the beast. The system developed the perception that pain was not something to be experienced and encouraged. The system encouraged you to suppress your immune system functions. So this is then where cancer, disease, and chronic illness comes from. They encourage you to take cough suppressants, mucus drying agents, painkillers, and even hormone replacement therapy through the remedies market. Consequently, through the remedy system and prescription drug system, fertility is established. First, it is developing antibodies from public exposure that are not allowed to be released via immune system suppressing agents. And then second, causing a person to react with remedies suppressing immune system functions. So that's how you develop the beast, and that's what causes the fertility. And so it all starts off with the perception of how you deal with pain. Okay? So when I say first, how does that beast get developed? Because you're exposed to stuff. Your body tries to release. You suppress your release process. It then turns into an enemy that works against you. And so, moreover, the system of remedies develops the immune system to attack itself. And inevitably develop parasitic growths and entities to be trained in specific areas as well as used for science experiments. Sometimes it gets so bad, people develop growths which latch onto different parts of their body that must be surgically taken out. When people hold an enemy inside, tearing down the infrastructure, they hunt for the enemy out there, projection and transference. And when they hold so many antibodies against itself, they become so fertile, sexual reproduction has been triggered. The person is on the hunt. The gender of the baby is determined by how much stress the mother is under. A woman developing a boy means she was under a lot of stress during that time of gestation. The amount of antibodies she holds determines that situation. The connection of the Y antibodies and the Y chromosomes makes a lot of sense. And so much fertility under stressful genetic lines also develops genetic diseases like autism. Remember, the herbal and prescription medicine market develops the fertility and the stressful situations. Organically, Mother Nature had to do that gender split to balance the human race at the time. Though, yeah, nation building, of course, carrying on the human race, but at the cost of death, destruction, and monster behavior. Okay? And so what I'm advocating in the future is, yeah, we're going to have a segment of society that'll be used as a tool, and they'll be given everything. They'll be our entertainment, they'll be our politics and religions and people to watch and whatever. And there'll be the people in the J world that will live indefinitely. And we won't be sexual, in my opinion. I mean, I'm making that assertion given where I'm coming from. I'm not going to knock sexuality because it's just part of the natural process when a body is in senescence. But if a body isn't in senescence, then there's no reason for sexuality. Okay? We won't be predatory. We're not going to bully anybody. We're keeping our shit to ourselves. We're not going to recommend remedies to people. It's not up to us to save anyone or destroy anyone. And so in my world, the J world, it's about, well, you could be an indicator, or you could be a representation, but my aim and my goal is not to come off like a religion that we're going to save people from themselves. There's no fucking way we can do that. And so how do we save the world? We represent. That's it. We represent. And there's no guarantee someone can do what we do, but we represent the culture that we are developing. And that's it. And we still give respect to others that have their own culture, and what we do is a representation to give people choices, and they make their own choices. And so stress to the immune system is what causes the fertility, and so much stress causes the gender of boys. Or else when you have only girls, where are the boys to hunt and inseminate and even protect? So the human population represents the immune system inside a person. So the distribution of boys and girls and diseases represents every single one of our immune systems, functions, and trauma. And so what goes on out there in my society is also what goes on in my body that I have to release. So when I'm going out in society, I'm taking basically a snapshot of my society, and it's coming into my body that I have to go and deal with and figure out and release the demons. So imagine what people are living through right now, through the trauma of their friends and their family and their society, and they hold all of that angst and chaos within. And then they're trying to find a way to find some kind of peace, and then end up in rest and peace because they can't, unless they release those demons. The only way to get some peace is rest and peace. That's where people end up. And so the remedies market has developed so much sexual orientation that we have so much diversity in the population. So the reason why the system projects mostly girls, if not all girls in the future, is because they figured out how to balance out the hormones within a person, which is why you have softer males and manlier females. You see the extremes in both males and females. Very manly men have so much testosterone, and they want to populate the world, and very female women have so much estrogen, she's looking to be populated, and she's highly sexual. And then it's war. Both are suffering. I can assure you that. Why are they suffering? To keep up the image. When you're so used to working off your looks and have everyone look at you and say, ooh, she's so beautiful. And you know how much work it takes, the image to keep up, to maintain? It takes a lot of money, even the torture of women and men to keep up the image, called Botox, plastic surgery, shopping for the latest gadgets, looking for that validation from everybody. And if they don't get validation, then they're nobody, right? To them, highly sexualized males and females are also looking for a release. And when needs are not met, all hell breaks loose. Women manipulate their situation. Men go on the hunt if they're not regulated by morality. Women also go on the hunt if they're not regulated by morality in a marriage. However, when you're able to balance out the estrogen and the testosterone in one person, and we're not experimenting on people using the remedy system, attacking the person's immune system, no more fertility. And if the system develops babies in a lab, it will be mostly female or beautiful males who aren't predatory. Okay? And so when you think about it, when you're like watching Wonder Woman, I was watching that. And her background is basically all females. All females. And some are more aggressive than others. And so, yeah. So then you won't need a male. You won't need it because you'll have both the defender, protector without the major predatory instinct. Because you've seen that when you have so much diversity of Y antibodies attacking the female, and then she develops an offspring that's a male. And there's drugs involved and prescription drugs and high stress situations, then that male could turn into a predator, could turn into a serial killer if crossed. You know, when you look at what happened with Charles Manson and all the different serial killers out there, what they were exposed to, high stress, a lot of violence in their background. Holy shit, you developed a monster. And so when you're able to balance out the estrogen and the testosterone in one person, and we're not experimenting on people, using the remedy system, attacking the person's immune system, no more fertility. And if the system develops babies in a lab, it will be mostly female or beautiful males who aren't predatory. And potentially no more men in the future. Men were developed from the stress of fertility in utero, the antibodies. And I've also researched and found that antibodies can switch and convert from being a defender to a predator, or a policeman to a gang member. And that conversion process is solely determined by the host reaction to immune system functions. That's the missing link. That's what determines gender and how predatory or peaceful that gender is. So we have women who are very predatory, have a lot more antibodies in their body, taking on a lot of male characteristics. I mean, a lot of my haters definitely fit that bill, and they also have boys. Now, that's not a coincidence. That was not a coincidence. That's not even ironic. That's just like, holy shit, right there. When you have females who are Christian and have boys and have told me so, that they have their boys make fun of me. And she loved to bully me. She loved to bully me. It was like, oh my God, she gets off on it. And she has boys. Wow. Right there, case in point. Not only did she turn predatory, but now her boys are going to potentially turn predatory if given the opportunity. And she's trained them to be her attack dogs. That's how dangerous it is out there when we're reproducing on bodies that are highly stressed out. And women are used as broad mares. And so the system did enslave women many years ago, developed a controlled slavery of women the last 100 years. And right now we are still in it with aggressive sexuality in both genders, determined to keep the stress in the world, determined to keep the wars and sexuality going until all out annihilation. The system was trying to tell you. And so if one must have their pleasures in paradise, you live by pleasure in paradise, one must die by pleasure in paradise. Remember, you already expect to pass away anyways. The system will make it as fun as possible and pleasurable as possible until it can't. So all of us have been given a choice. And it's not really anyone's fault. It was the culture we were born into, and it's time to evolve. And so I'm just going down my timeline. So this Air Force veteran, Michael Snyder, passes away due to a heart attack. And he's 42-year-old Air Force veteran, father of six. Six! Oh my God. Okay, that should be a major red flag. A father of six, of course in the military, but a father of six passed away due to a sudden heart attack on December 2nd while rocking his baby daughter to sleep at his home in Gardner, Kansas. Heart attack. So much fertility. So you have a bunch of babies, a lot of fertility, and you have a bunch, and you die from a heart attack from fertility. Antibodies. And so I said, when I turn 50 next year, I'm going to buy a whipped cream strawberry white cake and celebrate with my husband. And so I plan to be very conservative in my travels and get-togethers. I will choose those social occasions very wisely. I mean, very, if at all. 1 or 2 people at a time, if that. I can't do the groups anymore. I can't do the parties. I can't. That's why I like Facebook. It's a very safe social interaction that I don't have to cough out. It's already aggressive, but I'm just going to project and say it's going to be more aggressive next year. I don't feel like spitting out and coughing out a bunch of demons because it's been nice lately. Okay? I know the longer I stay in a public diverse group situation, the more bloated I become. And if you saw my videos last year, this last year, you saw how bloated I was from hanging out with people. And so this current environment right now is making everything more accelerated, even the growth and transmission rate, the entropy rate. And yeah, people are incubating a lot of disease within, even the children. That's why right now traveling to different places, in my opinion, is not a good idea. It just took one night for my husband to come home after a few days of being on the road, and I had to cough and sneeze and blow my nose and release so many of those poop demons. It was crazy. I didn't even realize that there was that much in me. And so the system needs to use that poop to release the demon. That's why I'm like, yeah, I get it. Okay, I can only imagine being out in the public for more than 8 hours would be like, oh my God. And so if we choose to travel in the future, most likely not, because I want to save money, or I want him to hang out with his guy friends. I know it will take me at least a week to release those demons. And I can afford to do that once in a while, but not all the time. But again, if I have to condition myself to be out in the public for whatever reason, then every morning I would be releasing those demons and sleeping a lot on the weekends and eating so much. For me to work at any job, like at a Giant Eagle or anywhere else in the public, I would have to eat so much and release so much to keep saving myself, because the demons in those supermarkets and that public would be attacking me in this accelerated environment. I could not afford to burn the candle at both ends in this environment. I would die faster. It would be too much. Okay, I'm not reading that. Oh yeah. I'm not going to talk too much about her. Candace Owens. I'm not going to go into that. I put that on there. I wrote about her attacking the Kardashians. I've done it too. So I'm going to let that just be what it is. But I think the main point that I'm glad I made, and everything else I'll just leave, is that fertility is entropy. Fertility is entropy. It's thermodynamics. And the whole J world says, okay, it's time now to bring back the substance. But that would require staying home and staying safe, assuming that, yes, sexuality is going to be off the table at some point, or at least lessen it so it's not taxing you. Okay. Lessen the remedies, lessen your exposure to I don't know, man. But yes, the family is entropy. That, if anything, if that was the point that I needed to make, was the sexuality and the fertility and the family is the entropy, and it is accelerating. That's the decay. That's the climate change. That's what Leave This World Behind was telling you. Okay? It's not enough just to believe that everything is going to be fine. You literally have to make behavioral changes. So the biochemical behavior changes is the difference between change in intention and outcome, versus just wanting something to be the end result. Okay? So just believing that, okay, I'm gonna live for a long time, and I understand Jillian, I believe Jillian, or Jillian's great. But if you're not literally changing your biochemistry, changing your actual behaviors, pulling out that crap, feeling the pain, eating all food, feeling the stuff under your armpits, not having sex, not using remedies, that's causing more fertility, just so you know. If you're not really doing what I'm doing, think about it, belief is just not enough. Belief is just not, that's the new age religious movement of, I'm just going to sit in intention but not change behaviorally. That's what's messing up the religious movement and the spiritual new age movement. Remember, I told you it was always your friends and family, politics, religion, science, and lifestyle, and even your sexual orientation was weaponized against you. Maybe not back then, but back then, before climate change, was a conditioning process. Now, everyone and everything will be your own battle to fight in a war against everything you ever became used to or dependent upon. Which is why I pick and choose my battles and social occasions very carefully. I feel and know exactly who and what I'm up against. And then I'm watching the dominoes fall. And I'm calling it. And now there is no pleasure. Feeling vindicated is a very short-lived experience. And so fertility is the division. Pieces of you all over the place. A litter. then died suddenly. When your genetic line has been divided so much through generational offspring, there's nothing left to divide any longer. And yeah. And so again, that whole tennis analogy, back and forth. See, I don't have to read this because that was just my exercise in my brain to develop then finally the ultimate conclusion, which was entropy, fertility, sexuality, family. And then the exposure to pets and other people. That's the thing, is when you have animals, when you're around animals, around people, that's constant fertility. You have to keep up with that level of energy, with the food, release, all that. It's a war. It's literally a war. Because you're taking in all the remedies and the things that are attacking that person's immune system to attack your immune system. Okay. And so right now, the entropy is accelerated in climate change. And so leave the world behind? Yeah. Infrastructure breakdown. Yeah. Died suddenly. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That was my fucking... See, it took sometimes I have to go through this process of talking. And then I already have the information just from all my research. Just basic concepts that stand alone. But when I finally bring it in and put it one word next to another, like entropy equals fertility, constant division, and then large families. And I had to be out there in the world and experience large families to see it, to make the connections. And then you all can make your own connections with how many boys and girls in your family, how many are struggling with cancer, disease, and chronic illness and died suddenly. And then the writing is on the wall. And you're like, holy shit. Then you can't pretend that you can't play ignorant. I mean, you can play ignorant. But once you see the evidence in your own world, not just my world is just another snapshot of your world. But once you see the evidence in your world, some of you will have the capacity to make the changes and extricate yourself from everyone around you who is cannibalizing the shit out of you, and maybe have one or two people that you can sort of depend upon in times of crisis. Yeah, that's scaling down. That's what the system is doing out there, but that's what you also must do if you want to survive. So the government's doing what they need to do to help humanity survive, and then you have to do what you have to do, what like the government's doing, so you can survive. And it's not about saving your grandchildren or your children, because they have to save themselves. And if they're a minor, they don't have the capacity to save themselves. It's out of your fucking hands. But you as a parent, if you want to live, and if it means you have to live to watch your kids pass away, because that will happen eventually at some point. How are you going to teach these kids doing what we're doing? They're not supposed to suffer, and they're not going to be pulling crap out of their ass. You just hope they make it. And even then, when they get to be like 20 and they're so far gone, you think they have the capacity to feel pain and take on stuff, and then they have now a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And they want to go get married and have a bunch of kids. It's done with. Parent, you have the capacity. Right now, today, you have the capacity, if you have the infrastructure and the support system that will allow you to do what you need to do. Hell yeah. Thanks, guys. Bye.